What's going on, everyone? Welcome into another edition of the 415ers podcast. Evan Giddings, Marc, Grandi, Odyssey Sports Podcast Network, 95.7 The Game. As always, Marc, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing all right, Evan. I guess a little bit better than Brock Purdy's inflamed elbow. We'll get into it, of course, but I'm doing all right. Can't complain in the middle of February. I know you're overcoming a bit of a sickness, so I imagine you could be doing a little bit better, but you're also getting to the end of it. So how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot better than I was in our previous episode, able to power through. But feeling good, able to get back in the work office tomorrow. So looking forward to that and looking forward to getting another episode in because we actually do have some news of relevancy to talk about. And of course, this was the date that was stapled, February 22nd. We are recording this on said date. And of course, you'll be hearing it on Thursday morning. But obviously, this was the day surgery was supposed to happen, and it will not be happening on February 22nd because, according to Tom Pelissero, Purdy visited with Dr. Keith Meister, who is the surgeon set to perform the surgery, recommended delaying Purdy's surgery until March. Early March is when the follow-up is going to be. We actually don't know if the surgery is scheduled then or not. But because of ongoing inflammation in his elbow and his UCL, they decided it was the best course of action to push the surgery back. And so, Marc, we're going to have to play the waiting game at this point, but there are some ramifications of that that I heard your show, Damon and Ratto, with Alan filling in for Damon, talking about today. And, of course, that's what everyone's talking about here in the Bay Area. Again, the quarterback situation for the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is, okay, what does this mean for his status for a potential week one game? And let's just play the timeline out here for a little bit. So, Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, as you've said, had this report on Tuesday evening. We're now recording this Wednesday evening. You're listening to it, as you said, probably Thursday. And he reported because of ongoing inflammation, they're not going to have the surgery this week. They will wait until early March. So let's just say, throw out a random day, March 5th. Let's say Brock Purdy gets the surgery March 5th, Evan. And let's assume that there's no surprises once he actually, goes under the knife, once they actually dig into his elbow and try to repair it. He doesn't need Tommy John. It's just a normal repair, not reconstruction. And I should add, by the way, that this news, the inflammation, doesn't suggest that Tommy John is more likely or anything. It doesn't mean that at all. So we're still relatively in the dark about the Tommy John side of things, Evan. As far as I understand it, it's very unlikely, but you won't know one way or the other until you actually go in and have the surgery itself. But let's just say it happens March 5th. It's not Tommy John. It's the 3-month recovery until he can start throwing. And of course, it'll start very light and then he can ramp up. And then 6 months from the date of the surgery is when generally he's cleared, ready for game action, and can participate, in practices without any limitations. So let's play that timeline out. A March 5th surgery, 6 months from March 5th is September 5th. Evan, the first game of the 2023 NFL regular season is September 7th. That's that Thursday night game that the Chiefs will be hosting whoever and getting their rings, and hoisting the banner. That's that game. So you're talking about if the timeline and the recovery is exactly as the doctors generally say, you're talking about Trey Lance, getting the full go. They're ready to play 2 days before the NFL's regular season begins. Now, it's not the Niners' first game. They'll have a few more days, of course, until Sunday. Potentially, they play on Monday night, whatever it is. They're not going to be playing on a Thursday night. So they'll have a few more days. But still, it just kind of further pushes into view the fact that Brock Purdy may not be ready for week one. Now, there's a very real possibility that he beats this rehab and he's back earlier than expected, earlier than the general timeline is. But as good of a chance as there is of that, maybe the opposite could be true. It could take him a little bit longer. Maybe he doesn't get the surgery March 5th. Maybe there's still a little bit of inflammation. Maybe the surgery is pushed back to March 12th and it's a whole week later. That we don't really know right now, Evan, but with every passing day and with every piece of news like this, Evan, it becomes more and more likely that Brock Purdy might not be ready for week one. And that is a problem. Trey Lance is there, and he should be good to go and ready to play if needed. But this is not good news for the 49ers. It's not the end of the world for Brock Purdy. It does not mean Tommy John is needed, but there is no hiding. This is a big deal, and it's bad news for the 49ers.
Yeah, much like Brock Purdy's UCL, and I apologize for using this as a joke, but I am partially torn on this. So here's how I feel about it. We don't have much precedent for this also when it comes to quarterbacks. And really, there's only two case studies that we have to base this off of, one being Jake Delhomme, the other being Nick Mullins, who 49ers fans are unfortunately very familiar with. So with Jake Delhomme, his UCL repair took him roughly 7 months to return. And he, by all accounts, was great the season after. I think it was 2007, and then 2008 he came back. The Panthers were 12-4 that year, although he injured it in October of the previous year, so he had an entire offseason to recover and ramp up. Now, the report is that, of course, it's 3 months without throwing, according to this internal brace surgery.
Yeah.
That is kind of the clarification that Dr. Keith Meister gave, is that it points all towards getting an internal brace. And that's where Nick Mullins comes in, because Delhomme did not have the internal brace surgery. Nick Mullins did. And Mullins was able to return in a 5-month timeline. So Pelissero, along with other reports from, I saw Mike Garofalo on NFL Network, a lot of the reports are pointing towards this not necessarily affecting the timeline a whole lot. But where I'm with you, Mark, is that pressing up against week one of the regular season is a significant deal. And if you are not necessarily confident that Brock Purdy is going to be 100%, well, do you feel comfortable compromising his elbow further should you thrust him into action and it's not 100%? I mean, it's going to be 100% healed, but how does he look? Is he going to be, I don't know, favoring, short passes, not be able to use his arm the way we saw him last year when he was at his best? So that's something that Kyle Shanahan is going to have to obviously weigh. And then the second part of this, which we'll get into in a few minutes, is, of course, Trey Lance and what his future is going to be for this season and potentially extended in San Francisco. When I heard the news, I was obviously not pleased. I don't want to say that I was shocked, though, because just coming from, I guess, more of a baseball background, Mark, when I hear UCL, I hear trouble. And so when I hear there being some sort of setback and inflammation, I don't necessarily think that that's all that crazy, because if there's still inflammation, honestly, less than a month after the injury, that to me is not something that's uncommon in elbows. Now, if I don't think it means that it's going to lead towards Tommy John, but the fact that Brock Purdy is going to have to wait until the beginning of March or possibly mid-March to get his surgery, I don't think should push fear into people as far as the timeline is concerned. To me, the timeline was always going to be the same. Brock Purdy is going to be up against it when week one starts of the NFL season in 2023 with his injury. And if the 49ers are comfortable with his ramp-up period, that 3-month period between, when he gets the surgery and when he's allowed to start throwing and when he gets going to the beginning of the regular season, if they're comfortable with that, then I am as well. And so I don't want to say it doesn't not change anything, Mark, but to me, when I feel like Brock Purdy and that UCL injury, the brace surgery that he's going to get, to me, it makes things a little more complicated, but it doesn't move the needle all that much from where my concern level from the original injury was to now.
Yeah, I think I disagree with you just a little bit, and this is simply just difference of opinion, because it's purely, it's purely speculative at this point. We don't know how Brock Purdy is going to respond to the surgery itself. I'm kind of more of the mind, I don't know, expect the unexpected when it comes to the 49ers quarterback position, and I'm not gonna assume things are going to go well. I do think an important thing to note here is, Brock Purdy and Dr. Keith Meister and Purdy's entire team and even the 49ers going up into this situation with the inflamed elbow. He went in on Tuesday to get it looked at, kind of prepped for the surgery on Wednesday. And this is, of course, when the report came out that his elbow is still a little too inflamed to undergo surgery. You are faced with that scenario, that situation. Undoubtedly, the right thing to do, I think this is what you're getting at as well. Undoubtedly, the right thing to do is to not push through and take a chance with surgery. The Niners and Purdy and Dr. Keith Meister and everyone are doing the right thing by delaying this, because if you do try to have surgery while the elbow is still a little bit inflamed, you increase the risk of infection, some stiffness after the fact, potential nerve issues. So while it does push back potentially the timeline a little bit, maybe there is a little bit of leeway. You mentioned Nick Mullins and his 5-month recovery, and this would be that same procedure. Maybe it affects the timeline just a little bit. Maybe we differ on how big of a deal that is, Evan. But undoubtedly, you're faced with this situation. They're doing the right thing. So I think there's a little bit of confusion around, well, why not, just go out and do it anyway? Like you're the timeline is the biggest issue here. No, the biggest issue is the elbow and making sure that you repair it, or if you happen to need it, knock on wood, reconstruct it well. And the other side of this, Evan, is generally speaking, pushing the timeline another week or two isn't the end of the world, because if it is just the repair at the 6th month, the 5 months it took Nick Mullins, okay, maybe at the worst he misses a game, maybe 2 games. It's up in the air, but it's not like, delaying the surgery for another couple of weeks, even for a month, is going to cost him a whole season. The other, of course, outcome is if he needs Tommy John. And well, guess what? Even if he needs Tommy John and he got that surgery a month ago, he's still missing all of next season. So the two outcomes of the potential surgery are he'll play a majority of the season or he'll miss the entire season. So really pushing the surgery back another week or two isn't going to cost Purdy more than a game or two max. So I do understand that side of it as well, but you cannot disguise this news for anything but unfortunate news. It's not a disaster. It's not the end of the world, but it's certainly not the news the Niners were hoping for.
No, it's not ideal, but like you said, many things aren't. So to me, it doesn't really once that injury happened in the NFC Championship game, the 49ers quarterback room becomes instantly changed. And to me, the hierarchy of that quarterback room is the same. I mean, so Trey Lance is going to have first serve, and Brock Purdy, if you believe that he is the guy, then whenever he is ready, he will step back in as starter. I don't believe that's necessarily the case, and we can get into why in just a little bit. But however you personally, a listener, Marc Grandi, Evan Giddings, whoever's listened to this podcast, has organized their quarterback depth chart, it is still the same right now as it was when we found out that he was going to get his surgery on the 22nd, and now when we find out he's going to get his surgery in probably early to mid-March. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. So the moment that he tears his UCL in the NFC Championship game, or the minute we found out that it was a torn UCL, the reality is, okay, it's going to be a tough offseason for Brock Purdy, and he's going to get back without much time to get ready for the regular season. That's essentially the given. Now, maybe that window just decreases a little bit with every passing day that the surgery doesn't happen, but I'm with you. It's not as if, Brock Purdy getting the surgery, say he got the surgery a week after the NFC title game, and he's already been, healing and recovering for close to a month, a handful of weeks now. The Niners still would have been in the situation of, well, is he going to be ready for all of training camp? Is he going to have enough time to get fully ready? So I do understand what you're saying. They were in this situation from the moment that the injury happened. But the margin for error is decreasing just slightly. Now, maybe the Niners are happy with Trey Lance, and we can certainly dive into that. But I think there is also something to the fact that this is still a young quarterback in Brock Purdy, who's going to have an entirely irregular offseason, and who could probably really benefit from taking the first team reps all offseason as, the first year full-time starting quarterback. So it's going to be a rough offseason for Brock Purdy, not the one he was envisioning, as he entered the NFC Championship game. But this news isn't something that, delivers the death blow to his coming sophomore season. That was more so the UCL tear. Not that it was a death blow, but that was, of course, the bigger thing as opposed to a surgery delayed by another 2 weeks.